Thanks everybody for coming this afternoon. Today we have a gentleman by the name of Byrne, who I have known for approximately 20 years. We've done campaigns together, we've worked in government together, and Jay is currently the president of an online public relations firm by the name of Vfluence. And he can get into that a little bit with you when he comes up. I've asked Jay to come tonight so that he can give us an overview of where the internet really got its start, its use in politics and campaigns, and its use in government, and also its applications in marketing in the private sector. Jay and I first met on some variety of Kennedy campaign in Boston, where he was one of those guys who sat in the back room and you never really knew for sure what he was doing, but he always looked busy. If Al Gore invented the internet, then Jay Byrne discovered it. From there, we worked together, and we worked on a few campaigns after that. Jay did a lot of press work. And he also was in charge of public affairs and government relations, congressional relations at USAID. He put together the effort to keep USAID independent and actually keep it from going out of business back about 10 or 15 years ago. He left government and went to work in with the private sector with Monsanto, and then started his own firm, Vfluence. Before I do introduce him? Thank you very much. Perhaps I should just let you point that out. That Senator Dole will be here on Thursday at 2 o'clock, where he'll be interviewed by Steve Scully of C-SPAN. And if you come, they will take a couple of questions from students. So come on down and have your 15 minutes. With no further ado, Mr. Byrne.
You know, we got a small enough group here today, and I tend to move around a bit. I know they want me to try to stay close to the microphone, but if you all can hear me, we'll keep it kind of informal. It's 4 o'clock. It's sort of the end of the day. I'm going to do my best to keep you awake. But this is your time. So if you have questions, don't feel like you need to hold them to the end. If I say we're going to cover it, I'll let you know, but feel free to interrupt me at any time if you've got a question. John said, my name is Jay Byrne. I run a company called Vfluence. We're a public affairs issues management firm. We focus principally on the internet, and we represent some of the best-known brands in the world, quite frankly, helping them manage their online reputation. John mentioned I did get my start in politics. I was a speechwriter. That was one of those things that I did, and did research for a guy named Joe Kennedy running for Congress about 25 years ago, it seems like. And I worked my way up through and ended up at the White House in the Clinton administration. Was the White House spokesperson for the then G7, that's dating me a bit too, economic summits. As John mentioned, I went to head up corporate communications for Monsanto and now run this company. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the history of the web. You know, I was an early adopter. I started using the internet, literally, it wasn't known as the internet so much, but FidoNet and Usenet, where they had various discussion groups and boards, a precursor to the World Wide Web, which came onto the scene in around 1993. And in 1993, I had one of these government titles that you go, no one in the real world would ever know what this means. But I was Deputy Assistant Administrator for Legislative and Public Affairs at the U.S. Agency for International Development. It was a fancy way of saying I was in charge of communications. And as a government agency, we were one of the first to put up a major website and start to integrate that into our communications plans and strategies. replacing the distribution and publication of a lot of content that we had in hard paper form with electronic form. And that was really sort of the first use, I think, that people were aggressive about after, in terms of the World Wide Web. I'm going to talk to you today, though, about why the internet matters today. I'm going to talk a lot about some business examples, but I want to stress from my experience, there are no straight commercial transactions anymore. They're all political transactions. They're social interactions where economics and politics merge. We were speaking earlier today, so someone was talking about milk, and I said, you know, purchasing milk is a political transaction. The dairy case is a place where you're forced to make a whole bunch of different decisions, and we're going to show you some examples of how that manifests itself online, because we represent a lot of folks in agriculture as well. But why is the internet important? The tagline for my company is, it starts online. I believe today, and I think the facts confirm, that the internet is the starting point. For young people, that's pretty much clear. We know that young people today now spend more time online collecting and gathering information than they do getting information from all other sources of media combined. Public opinion leaders, influencers now say that research shows that the internet influences them more than any other source of information. There's nearly 1 billion people online globally. It's not just something that is a North American or even Western phenomenon. And a couple points here that are important to note as we move forward about how the internet works and what's important about it. 98.8% of all online experiences start at a search engine. There's a great white paper out called Search is Brand. And by the way, I'll make a copy of this disc available with all the notes pages on it, which have references to all the things I'm going to mention and URLs where you can find it. So you can go and track down a copy of Search is Brand. It's a fascinating read. Talking today about how that the search engines dictate who you are more than you do. And it's not just, am I found when they search for me. Google me, you will find me. I am the first result on my profile. But right under that is a profile from a group called GM Watch and Lobby Watch and Corporate Watch. Somehow I've become, one of them calls me the evil Darth Vader of, behind-the-scenes internet campaigns for various multinational corporations that are, I'm evil, they're evil, it must all be bad. My brand is therefore a part of that. I don't get to control it completely. So search is brand is an important, 98.8% of all internet experiences start at a search engine. And then the other thing I want you to remember as we go through this now is the incredible growth of multimedia use online. 4.8, this is actually closer to 6 million people a week are now downloading multimedia. Simple for most of the folks. How many people have iPods? All the young people. Everyone else, we're going to be getting them soon. They're downloading music or other content, but now it's more and more so now. The new iPods you get video on. I left it in the office, but I can watch television now from whatever I've recorded on my TiVo at home on my telephone. So I download, say what I want to watch, and I can bring it on a plane with me or whatever. It's amazing. So it's really the sense of convergence where the internet's all coming together. So in order to understand this, I'm going to run you through, this is my or our ontology, philosophical organizing principle of the web, because how do you get your arms around it? If it's this important, and most people think, oh, it's too big. We can't get our arms around it. We can't understand it. We can't relate to it. I'm going to talk you through an approach and a way to do this. Well, one, I want you to think about the internet as more than just websites. We're going to look at 3 overlapping buckets that we call e-real estate, dialogue, and tools. E-real estate, simply, things like websites, portals, indexes, places that you can physically go that you're generally going to view through your browser. Okay, think about it in those terms. Dialogue, everything from instant messaging and email and chat rooms, things like that, peer-to-peer or peer-to-many communications. And you see it overlaps with e-real estate because some dialogue is archived online. You can go and find it on a website after it's taken place. But the vast majority of it is in the form of email or instant messaging. Instant messaging is the fastest growing form of dialogue. Text messaging on phones, things like that. It surpassed last year the volume of email. We're sending about 2.5 trillion emails a year, 2.5 trillion. and they expect that we'll see close to double that in instant messaging this year alone. Tools. Tools are interactive applications. They have to live on eReal Estate or on Dialog. And if you've ever taken an online survey or played a game on a website, that would be an example of a tool. Use an online calculator of some kind. If you've received an email with an interactive application such as a birthday card, it opens up and does something. That would be an example of one that lives on eDialog. Now, so all these things, you can think of almost anything that's happening on the net today and drop it into one of these buckets. And that then, if we can identify and organize what's online, we can then start to evaluate and measure it. It's the first step to getting our arms around it. Then we got a bit of a curveball thrown at us. Blogs. Everybody today wants to talk about blogs. All of my corporate clients, we need to blog, we need to blog, we need to know what blogs are. Help us with blogs. All right? I always say take a step back, take a breath. First of all, you've got to understand what they are. We'll talk about that a bit here. Blogs actually, of course, are simply, they can be textual, audio, or video, or a combination thereof. The most common ones we know out today are principally blogs that are textual, but podcasts, which are audio blogs, are coming up quick behind. And I would say that we're going to see video blogging, or I think the term is, some people call it blogging, some people call it vcasting. iTunes has just come out and said they're going to call it video podcasting. If iTunes says it, I think that's going to be the term we're going to end up using for this. Right now, it tends to be basically, it's a web diary. Chronological in order, it can have one or multiple authors, it can be open, closed, to comment, a variety of things. But a typical blog looks like this, okay? You're going to see a time or a date stamp. You're going to see some content, often with multiple embedded hyperlinks. This is important because I'm going to speak to why blogs are important and influential. A lot of people say that its fads are going to go away. Maybe, maybe not, but I'm going to show you what about blogging isn't faddish and is about defining the future of the web. And it relates in large part to these embedded hyperlinks. They inform search engine results. Has anybody received an email in the last year either saying, Google the word failure and click on feeling lucky? Anybody? What do you get?
Bush.
You get the official biography of President Bush on the White House homepage. Does the word failure appear anywhere on President Bush's official biography? Absolutely not.
Wasn't that originally John Kerry that would come up?
No, they had another one for Kerry under waffle. And the word waffle, how does that work? Well, the way search engines work is they're out there looking at content and coding that content to be found. And they index it, and it's funny, a lot of people think, I type into Google and it goes out into the web. No, you type into Google, it goes to Google. And Google has a big bin full of stuff that it's already found on the web, that it's continually updating. In fact, they have 6 bins, each one a mirror of the other, and each one being updated pretty close to the same time. But I've actually done Google searches at the same time from 2 different places and had different sets of results come up. So there's different bins. And what they do is they code these, and they all have an algorithm that determines what comes up first. And one of the principal factors of those algorithms that decide what the search placement is how many people link to you, and what keywords are they linking to you with. And so what did bloggers do? They typed articles that said failure, and they embedded the link to the White House official biography of George Bush in it, and they shared those articles with one another, circulating them all over the place. And therefore, the number 1 result for the keyword failure is now the White House homepage official biography of the president. So that's one of the ways that they have they can influence. Often they allow you to comment and generate feedback. There's usually some profile or contact information. Interesting thing about blogs and standards out there, and this is another thing that's altering some of the ways that we communicate and share information, is they want you to define who you are, but you don't have to be transparent. What do I mean by that? I don't have to say, I'm blogging as Jay Byrne. But I do need, if I'm going to gain credibility in the culture of the blogosphere today, to say, I'm a public affairs guy. I worked at the White House, or maybe put some description of who I am and why what I'm saying matters. Okay? You see a lot of lawyers blogging today, but they don't tell you who they are. They just say, I'm an intellectual property lawyer. Because they want to blog openly and stuff about, say, patent issues they're working on, but they couldn't if it was going to link to their reputation. I will tell you, I actually blog, but I blog anonymously. And maybe you'll be able to figure out what blog is mine out there when you look for it, but I blog on corporate travel. Because I'm on the road 2-3 days a week, and I get tired of certain things, and I have an opinion of it. But also, my clients include Hilton Hotels, Southwest Airlines. If I was blogging under my name, one, people might think, oh, if he's saying something good about Hilton, which I occasionally do because I like to stay there, that I'm biased, or that I'm doing it as a paid promotion for this. So I don't want that, and I actually do want to blog on this. So you'll see a lot of bloggers out there who define themselves, but they don't actually have to say who they are, and the blogosphere tends to accept that. Don't get caught misrepresenting yourself ever blogging, however. When that happens, they really go after you in a big and bad way. The next thing you'll see is usually a little orange button that says RSS or XML. People seen these? You see them on websites, and maybe not sure what they are? This is what's important about blogs. This is what's not a fad. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. Most people have heard of HTML, which is Hypertext Markup Language. It was the original language of the web. It enabled people who produce different types of content to put it all into one common coding language that could be viewed through browsers. It's what created and enabled the web was the creation of this language. XML is the language of the future web. It's something that we call the semantic web. And the semantic web is going to be an internet where we're no longer going out to find things. What we're doing is we're going to be setting up profiles that let people know what we want, and we'll have agents out there looking on our behalf and bringing it to us. You don't agree? Scary. RSS or XML, RSS stands for really simple syndication. It allows for the syndication of content out there that can go out, and if I'm using a news aggregator, for example, which is a little tool now built into most email programs, I can click on that little RSS feed and drag it into my news aggregator. Every time this website is updated, this blog is updated, I don't have to go to the blog to know it. It will automatically send it to my email account. And that's that concept. If things can start to automatically come to you, you can start to set up filters and screens, and the future of the web is, my refrigerator is going to be doing this for me. I'm going to open the refrigerator, take the milk out, it's going to be empty. The refrigerator knows it's empty. Probably using RFID tagging, radio frequency ID. People know about that. That's a big issue that's going to be hitting this year, by the way. And it'll be able to start to log into my little home computer network. IBM's already created one. That will let me know I need to add milk to the shopping list. It can then start going out onto the web looking for the best deals on milk. And it can buy it for me. It'll show up in my grocery order when it comes home. This concept of this and the XML language is enabling all sorts of these types of applications. The first of which was blogging. And that's the real power and that we have with blogging. Sure, this concept of anybody with an opinion out there putting a diary out and having some influence, it might be a fad. But not the technology behind it. This is defining the future of where the internet's going. And it's very important to make note of. Okay, what about blogs though? I love this quote from Glenn Reynolds from Instapundit. He's constantly ranked one of the top 3 blogs out there. One of the very early bloggers. He says, bloggers have very little power. What they have is influence. And so when my corporate clients come to me and say, we need to blog, I say, I don't think you do. Probably don't. Some of you do. Some blogs are doing well on the corporate side because they think, well, if I have a blog, I'll have influence. I'll have power. You don't. There's very few individual blogs that are actually influential or powerful. How do they gain their influence? Those embedded hyperlinks. But what do you have to do for those to have any influence or power? You have to get other people to agree with you. So the whole point of blogging is that when you combine, when people agree with you and they take your content and post it to their site, and they take those same hyperlinks and they all start to share, if one person thought it was funny and had the hyperlink failure to the White House official biography, it would be meaningless. But he convinced thousands of other bloggers to agree with him and do the same thing. And they shared this and syndicated it. And in fact, because they have these RSS feeds, which automatically link these blogs together, and we often see blogs aggregating the content of other bloggers, that then they can instantly create thousands of hyperlinks that the search engines see into a piece of content that essentially lights it up and drives it up in the search results. And we'll show you how that happens and how it works. There's about 60 million blogs out there, according to Technorati. 20 plus million are indexed. That means 20 million of them are found in search engines. There's two principal places to find these today. Technorati.com is the current leading indexer of blogs, and they add some features that will give you a little idea of the number of syndication links and things like that by a particular blog. So that's a good place to go if you're looking for blogs. And blogsearch.google.com, Google has developed a blog search feature. And of course, anything Google gets into is going to probably dominate the market. So those two places, there's several others, Ice Rocket and a range of others. Again, I've got a list of them that index these blogs so they can be found. A lot aren't indexed, and that means if you're not indexed, you're not going to have that influence. But it also means if people want to track and monitor blogs, there's a lot out there that's very hard to find. And you really have to know how to look and dig through to find them. We can talk about that later. There's nearly 1 million new blog posts daily, and only about 5 million active blogs, meaning blogs that are updated a couple times a week. A third of internet users read blogs. Okay? A third. 10% are writing them or posting comments to them. But 60% of people don't know what they are. I bet you there was a few people in the room here who still aren't quite sure. But you know what? You know what this tells me? If 60% of the people don't know what they are, but a full 30% are using them, that we have only just begun to see the tip of the iceberg in terms of the influence and importance of where this movement is heading, where the blogosphere is going. Because as people become aware of blogs in the blogosphere, what do? They become adopters in very high numbers. So there's a lot a lot that we haven't even seen yet in terms of how this is going to start to drive how we communicate and how we're influenced. So if not, if search is brand and these guys have that much influence over search results, and think about if you're trying to make a decision, whether it's a political one, who to vote for, what milk to buy, or whatever, where do we go today? Most of us start online. And we're going to show you some examples of how they do that. This is a little video clip from last year's video blogging or video vlogging conference. I think this gives a little bit of a flavor for what bloggers feel about their influence and power. Let's just take a minute to watch it.
We are the media. 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 Are the media. Media. We are the media.
Revolution
will be bloggified.
I like that because I think it speaks to what these people believe, that they are the media, that they're overcoming mainstream media, they're revolutionizing and democratizing content online. You notice some of the blogs, and there's a guy that does his video podcast every day from the John, but he gets like 4 million visitors to watch it. There was another guy there who once took an axe and literally put it into his head, and he got 9 million downloads. And made about $30,000, $40,000 and ended up in the hospital for a week. There's a lot of interesting stuff. So how does this work and why is it important? Let's say we have blogger number 1 here. Let's see if I can use this. And she writes something. And then, that's right, these things don't usually work on these types of screens. And maybe she's just pointing to a particular piece of content. And she's trying to create some amplification of it. But she only has maybe 9 people. 9 people read her blog. So if 2 of them visit the blog and physically type in every day and go to it, maybe 7 of them use one of those aggregators and it goes to their email. 1 of them is another blogger, though. Okay? And everything that she writes, he automatically reposts to hers because they've got a syndication deal going back and forth. And so when she creates that, it automatically, through RSS, is updated to his site, and they see then 2 hyperlinks that point into that content, letting it up, indexed by the search engines. So it's not going to have a big impact. But let's say the person that she syndicates to has another 10 people that read his, and that a couple of them have another 10. It's that you tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends, and so on. And next thing you have is something we call a blog storm or a blog swarm. Syndication plus amplification equals a swarm. And then that is what drives those search engine results that go up. And we can see here an example of how bloggers link to each other. Here is a graphic showing the top 50 blogs out there and the links that they share to and from one another. And you see those ones up at the top have the most number of links pointing in. And the ones that are more influential, it's the more links, the more people you get to agree with you. So it's this very democratic sense, increases your influence. Some examples of blogs that are, and influence that have happened. Anybody hear about the kryptonite lock issue a couple years back now? Kryptonite locks, when I was growing up, we used to have the chain locks. And, I lost my bike every couple of years. Someone would clip it and steal it. Kryptonite comes along with these horseshoe-shaped locks that you can't break into, we thought. One blogger on September 12th, this was 2003, I believe, posts that you can, to a bike forum group, that Bic pen cap can open the kryptonite lock. In fact, 2 days later, put a video up showing how you could do it. And within 3 days, nearly 1 million people are watching this video. The next day, the company issued a press release saying, ignore it, our locks are effective. The story is picked up in the New York Times, and the bloggers get angrier because how can they say it's not an issue? We have it on video. By the next day, nearly 2 million people a day are watching this. In 10 days, product was recalled. It took bloggers 10 days to take down an entire product line and cost the company $10 million. Other examples, the CBS News Dan Rathergate scandal. Remember the little TH on the thing? It was started by bloggers. It was actually a political blogger, a guy who's a Republican consultant in Alexandria, Virginia. It didn't come out who the blogger was who tipped this off until afterwards, but he started it. And Dan Rather lost his job, essentially, at CBS Evening News, in large part because of this. Senator Trent Lott and the comments that he had made at Strom Thurmond's birthday party that people equated and linked to racism. Bloggers were the ones that put this out and caused this. And the Terry Schiavo case, as well, started in the blogosphere. They were able to bring attention and illuminate issues that were being swept aside by the mainstream media, and the mainstream media then were forced to come back and cover them. How do you know when to be concerned? I'm not going to get into too much detail with this, but this is a graphical image. We map out online environments and this is what we work for the oil industry right now. We're managing issues associated with price and windfall profits. And this is, in the center here is a Greenpeace blog that deals with this issue, and you can see who they syndicate to, and like they jump out here to one blogger who then syndicates out this way. You can start to map out and see the networks and influence that they can have. And we track this, and this was right up around the time of the Senate hearings. We saw a big spike, and this was the Exxon profit reporting. And you can see how this stuff ends up in the papers and the blogosphere. So it usually precedes this. Sometimes it mirrors it. And then an example of another group, and this involved mad cow disease, where they didn't quite have the same network and they weren't able to have the same effect. But there's actually ways to measure and identify and track this stuff as it's happening online. We talked about Google bombing is what that other thing is called, where the word failure or miserable failure generates the George Bush. French military victories is another one. You type in French military victories and you click I'm feeling lucky, and it comes up and it looks like it's Google and says, did you mean French military defeats? There's no, it's not actually a Google page. It's a page mocked up to look like Google. Because Google actually didn't generate those results, but a lot of people don't know that. It's also true this is not just textual, but it's now audio and video. Most people are experiencing the audio side through the iTunes interface here, when it's now enabling us to watch or see, to listen or even watch video on our little iPods and such. And it's also, this is where I think it's really going to get a little interesting and perhaps scary for some, is it's now, who here has TiVo or knows what TiVo is? TiVo, so there's a bit, everybody, it's like the school has, you guys, when I was in school, we didn't have TV. had to go to the lounge to watch it. Digital video recording, or TiVo, allows you to record shows while you're watching them and things like that, but it's watching you while you're watching. So when I'm using my TiVo, let's say I'm watching a piece on mad cow disease on 60 Minutes. TiVo knows this, and TiVo will come up with suggestions and say, oh, you were watching this. We have a piece on mad cow on the Nature Channel. Would you like to watch this? But now, the latest generation of TiVo is now plugged into the internet. And it's not just looking at what's available on the broadcast channels. It goes out onto the internet, and it's looking for video available there. And it will start to tell me, oh, there's a piece here from Consumer Union, Publishers of Consumer Reports on this. Would you like to see this piece on mad cow disease? And so influencers and people seeking to influence our public opinion, who used to have to go through the filters of mainstream media to get on our television sets. And most young people today are just watching this on the internet anyway. They're using it at computers. They're not even bothering with the TV side. But now for everyone else, we're now being influenced by the stuff that's being generated without any of the traditional filters or checks and balances that mainstream media has to offer. And we'll show you some examples of what's out there. But just as a quick note, some people want to know, well, what makes a good blog? There's some elements here that do. You don't need to scribble to write them down. I'll give you a disc. You can have a copy of all this. Feel free to scribble if you want, but I just don't want people to miss the point, which is there's some elements and some lists of the top blogs, and we also have posted to our website best practices if people are interested in blogging and what makes them successful. But the main message I want to leave with you about blogs is they're about reformation. Hugh Hewitt has a very good book. He's a bit conservative in his politics. As you guessed, coming from Boston, I'm a little more progressive. He writes from a very conservative bent, but he's incredibly insightful. And he likens blogging to the Reformation of the Catholic Church, where Martin Luther went and took a copy of a verse from the Bible, translated it into language that average people could read, and posted it to the door of the church. Prior to that, the only people who had control of one of the most important pieces of your daily life, your religion and faith, were the priests, because all of the writings of the church were written in languages that they had studied and learned, and not in local German or whatever. And I think that blogging is very similar to that. They're taking and wresting control of content out of traditional sources and placing it with anyone that can get other people to agree with them. We'll see if that's scary or not, but I think it is a little scary at times, but it's also not a bad thing. A lot of people now have a lot more control and ability to influence what people see and learn, and we sort of hit a peak, I think, in media with what the McDonaldization sort of USA Today style content. Real, just top line, simple stuff. And I think we're seeing with the internet and blogging a negative reaction to that commoditization of content and news. And I think it's going to have an effect. I mentioned earlier that I principally work in the commercial realm, but everything online today is political. All commercial transactions have a political bent and tone to them. And I'd like to use some examples from some of our clients and some of our experience to talk about that. Let's look at it from a couple perspectives. Healthcare. Why would the internet be important for healthcare? Well, 110 million people go online every week, an average of 3 times, for health or nutrition information. In fact, this has become, probably the internet has more influence over health than almost any sector that I've seen it work on. 6 million people a day, more than seek advice from all healthcare professions combined, according to the American Medical Association, seek nutrition and healthcare advice. The AMA, in fact, says that when they survey and poll people, the number 1 most credible source of information is their family doctor. Number 2, the internet. Yet they're 6 times more likely to go online than they are to seek advice from their doctor. The internet is more influential now than physicians in terms of dictating how we take care of ourselves. And the demographics, too, we can break those down. So we can see for any demographic group how people come. There's great data out there. There's a website called clickz.com/stats. And again, it's on the reference page. And it shows you all the different research that's been done by various demographic or issue sectors about how people are coming to the web. And it's a great resource if you're ever interested in looking at that. Another way that we look at how people come to issues, and here's an example using food biotechnology, is the language people use. In public relations, we often are taught how to use such things as risk communications, best communications practices, never repeat negatives, use only certain language. And I can tell you, having worked for Monsanto, that we use in the food biotechnology industry, we only use agricultural biotechnology. What words don't we use? Genetically modified or genetically engineered or GMOs. The research shows when you poll people, do you support genetic engineering in food? The majority say no. You ask them, do you support food, the use of agricultural biotechnology in food? The majority say yes. They're the same thing. But language is so important and language matters. So one of the other things you can look at is what language people use online to come to this issue. How do we get it? We buy it from the search engines. The great thing is there's a whole industry out there, and you can gather this information, and you can get it. You can get some of it for free. There's a website that drives Yahoo search marketing. It's called overture.com. And it'll generate these little, so you can type in any keyword, and it'll tell you for the last month how many people searched on it. So we see 3,914 people a month were searching on GMO, 7,000 plus a month genetically modified foods, all this food biotechnology or agricultural biotechnology, 673. If I'm using only the words agricultural biotechnology because I'm using my best communications and marketing practices, I'm missing out on talking to all these people because they're not using that language. So one of the things we know is that, and we can look at the trends from month to month, is an issue growing. When we managed the online reputation for beef for the cattlemen, and we were looking at the issue of mad cow disease. Cattlemen, by the way, don't like to use the word mad cow disease. Do you know what they use? Encephalopathy. And he's a professor. I can't pronounce it. Am I going to type it into Google? Of course not. At its peak, about 300 people a month were searching on bovine spongiform encephalopathy. How many people a month do you think were searching on mad cow? 300,000. 300,000 searches a month reported by the search engines at its peak. In fact, I can equate different types of... I can tell you, based on a language trend, if something is an issue, a crisis, or whatever or not. Right now, mad cow is back down to about 10,000 searches a month and remaining steady. Obesity right now is being searched on at about 100 to 150,000 searches a month. And it has been holding steady for the last 12 months. This is a major issue. It's not going away. It's not a fad or a trend, things like that. So we can look at these terms and we can track the way they go. And what's interesting, like on biotech issues...
Jay, sorry to interrupt. How would you define a trend or a fad as far as a length of time?
Anything that I see over 100,000 searches a month for more than a year is not just not just a trend, it's an issue. It's a part of our life. That would represent sufficient numbers of people that have interest in this, versus something that may have may have a couple 100,000 over a period of a couple months, but then drop back down to under 10,000 a month. It was interesting here to note that there were more people searching on the benefits of GMOs or pros and cons of GMOs than all people searching on agricultural biotechnology combined. And yet when they were searching on benefits, what were they finding? Activist groups that said there are no benefits. So even people looking for information that wanted to know, tell me what the benefits are, thinking they would find them online, were presented without that information, even though that information exists. And if we're so influenced by the web and search engines, you can imagine how this starts to drive our opinions and public policies in ways that can be very easily manipulated if you don't approach this and understand it from this. So what do people see? They see all these negative websites when they're looking for stuff on biotechnology with the language that they're using. We work with the industry to try to get them to understand this and try to present a better face, work with academics, etc. So, and how do they use it with the blogosphere and video? There's over 20,000 indexed audio podcasts out there. These are not music podcasts. These are people that are creating their own news and radio shows. And there's hundreds of video vlogs or video podcasts. PETA now has PETATV.com, their own website dedicated to this. Consumers Union has their video vault. Labor groups have television channels. Political organizations, I've got to tell you, John Edwards' campaign website called One America Committee, I believe, .org, has just launched, and it's all multimedia, and it's actually a really well done site. It's got a consultant by a guy named Chris Wynn out of D.C. I don't know him, but he's doing a great job. And he's starting to influence and impact dialogue in a wide range of issues. Networking with labor groups, networking with corporate social responsibility groups, and socially responsible investment funds. And now you go in Google TV, you go to Google in the Google video section, and you can start to create your own channels of television for news consumption, and his stuff is starting to pop up. I mentioned the Mag Cow example, and I'm watching Mag Cow on television on 60 Minutes. Well, here's what I get now on TiVo from Consumers Union.
The Bremer family eats a lot of hamburgers. Because of the recent mad cow scare, the Bremers now look for organic beef for their burgers.
We've looked for it, but it's not readily available in the supermarkets, so you have to go to find a specialty shop in order to find it. It makes it a little difficult.
Consumer Reports' Urvashi Rangan is a food labels expert. She says there are only two types of beef that offer a reasonable assurance of safety. One is organic.
Organic describes an environmentally friendly farming production method that bans the use of animal byproducts in feed.
And since organic labeling is enforced by the USDA, it's considered safe for consumers. There's a second label to look for, biodynamic.
It's independently verified and also prohibits the use of animal byproducts in animal feed. It's harder to find. You may not find it in your supermarket, but you should look in your local farmers markets.
As for organic beef, Consumer Reports says a website called eatwellguide.org can help you find stores that offer it. Start by typing in your zip code, then specify organic beef. You'll get a list of stores that sell it, either in your area or online. That's good news for the Bremers, since burgers are a big hit at their dinner table. This is James Andrews.
That sounds almost like a news piece, doesn't it? And it's brought to you by Consumers Union, publisher of Consumer Reports. Sounds like credibility. Anybody here studying agriculture, know anything about this stuff? The USDA organic seal, is it a safety seal? Of course not, it's a marketing seal. They claim it. Certified safety. We showed this to the Agricultural Marketing Service at the USDA because that's one of the last things they want to see happen. Is organic beef safer than conventional beef? No, they sort of failed to mention that actually the first cases of BSE were in Europe were detected on organic farms in Germany. Even Consumer Reports, which they suggested Urvashi Rangan is with Consumer Reports. She's not. She's with Consumers Union, which publishes Consumer Reports, yes. But Consumer Reports has even reported that there's no safety benefit from organic beef. They hold their mainstream publication to a different standard than they put out here. But watching this, and if I saw this, TiVo offered it up to me on my local television station, it would convey a whole sense. And there's all kinds of stuff like this out there online on different issues now, competing with what we thought was mainstream media and those traditional filters and checks and balances. What this is an advocacy group piece, and this group advocates the elimination of beef from the food supply. But we don't know that from looking at it. There's other examples, and they're using a lot of stuff aimed at children, using cartoons and such. And here's one, it's called the Crafty Campaign. Let's see if I can get this on.
Ah, the holidays. That magical time of year is upon us once again. If you're like 99% of American families, you'll be bringing craft foods into your home this holiday season. And by doing so, you'll also be taking part in the largest genetically engineered food experiment in history. That's right. Kraft is using ingredients genetically engineered in a laboratory. They're serving up new and inadequately tested combinations of DNA never before eaten by human beings, posing risks to our health such as new allergies, new toxins, and antibiotic resistance. And that's why Kraft counts on you and your family to help them determine the health effects of eating virtually unregulated genetically engineered foods. This method of product safety testing is a favorite of Kraft's parent company, tobacco giant Philip Morris. The truth is, Kraft really doesn't know what genetically engineered products will do to us. Tell Kraft you don't want to be part of the experiment.
Creative stuff. And is that geared towards you or me? Is that geared towards you or me? We're a little older perhaps than the audience for that. This was meta-coded so it would come up in searches for nickjr.com. This is being geared towards children and to influence them and such online. These guys are pretty good at what they do. So the internet is really where these campaigns are all coming together. Mike Dole of Public Citizen, which is one of the largest advocacy groups out there, started by Ralph Nader, says the internet has become the latest, greatest arrow in our quiver of social activism, benefiting us more than the corporate and government elites we're fighting. It's being used as a lobbying, influence, and organizing tool. It's an alternative form of media. Language, as we discussed, is being defined out there. Here's one of my favorite sites as an example. Working for Change. Working Assets. Anybody heard of it? A socially responsible credit card and telephone company. You sign up for Working Assets, and every month you get a free pint of Ben & Jerry's. Hey, what could be better? All right? But also every month, what they don't, they have some things to say about some of our clients we track. So we signed up for their service. You ever fill out a credit card application? It's like 32 pages, small print. Well, on page 17, there's a little box conveniently checked for you already that you have to uncheck if you don't want this element of the additional service that they offer, which is every month, based on your zip code and where you signed up, they will send letters on your behalf to members of Congress, regulators, governors, etc. How do we know this? One month, the person who signed up in our office to track this stuff got a letter back from his senator saying, thank you for writing about mad cow disease and your concerns on this. I didn't write. They called the office and they faxed him. Sure enough, the letter, it didn't say Working Assets. It didn't say anything else. And it had his name typed at the bottom of it with his address. So you hear about these campaigns, lobbying campaigns, generating hundreds of thousands of letters to regulators, senators, congressmen. Many of them are from campaigns like this that bring in not just advocacy, but for-profit marketing interests combined, and they're joining together on the web to create influence online and to lobby on various activities. This is a little schematic. There's a great book by a George Washington University professor. Well, it's in the notes. It'll come to me in a second. He wrote Gerald Manheim. He wrote Biz Wars and Death by 1,000 Cuts. And what he does is he evaluates and looks at the campaigns of different interest groups, whether they be nonprofit advocacy or for-profit marketing or political. And he's developed a schematic that shows their approach. One, we see in any of these campaigns a very standard storytelling element, which is they're defining victims, villains, and heroes always. So that, it's like watching the evening news. I always watch, well, who's the defined victim, who's the villain, who's the hero. We start to see these in any story that's being presented out in lobbying today. And what they take it a step further is they look at a target and then they evaluate, this is what we would call the value chain today of a company. And the value chain is just not the company and its customers. It includes its vendors, its employees, its investors, its bankers, creditors, etc. And they look at where are the weak points here that we might